for that will be either there's too much oil on the platen, or there's debris on the platen. Now that could be debris on the lower platen or debris on the upper platen. The easiest way to tell if the dough is on the platen is you look at the dough that was just pressed. It'll have like a scar on it. And wherever that scar is wherever it's adhering to the platen, either upper or lower. So look on the lower platen and make sure it's clear. If it's clear, then it's probably on the upper platen. If you don't see something there, it might be there, but might be relatively invisible. And just give it a little brush with the sea salt and a paper towel, and that'll help clear that off, and you'll be ready to go. Once you remove the dough from the tray, gently, you're not pulling on it, because pulling on it will deflate it. When you deflate the dough, you will not have a good pizza. You want to gently set it into the dough tray on top of the oil that's in the tray to oil the dough ball. You don't need to oil the dough press. If there's too much oil on the dough press, that oil will prevent the dough from stretching perfectly and fully inside the lower platen of the press. Made gluten-free dough is something that we've had for about 8 years. I don't know of any other restaurant anywhere that's making, especially a chain of restaurants, that's making gluten-free dough in-house. It's very special, very unique to Blaze Pizza. One thing that's even more special is that we're using extra virgin olive oil in our gluten-free dough. If a guest comes into one of our restaurants and says that they are celiac and they're extremely high risk, make sure you warn them that in our restaurants we handle wheat. We handle wheat on the assembly line, we handle wheat in the back of house, and there is always a chance that there's going to be some cross contact and they should eat at their own risk. However, if they're willing to take that risk, our gluten-free dough, as you know, is made in our mixer. So if someone doesn't clean our mixer well, there's a chance for cross contact there. Then they use a scale, they measure it out, it goes into a dough tray, it goes onto a dough press. There's a lot of opportunities for cross contact. Complaints that we get from guests. One very common one is where a gluten-free guest asks for someone to change gloves, but then something happens later on in the line where maybe the person working expo touches with their gloves that crust while they also touched another crust that contains gluten. So whenever you see a gluten-free crust, whether it be the traditional made-in-house gluten-free crust or cauliflower gluten-free crusts, make sure that you're spending a little extra caution, trying to not use the same gloved hands, using the tongs whenever possible. You're on stage, and so a guest will watch and they will call you out every time they see something, and it's something that we could avoid if we were just being a little bit more careful and more cognizant of the fact that the gluten-free guest is going to be a little bit more particular than the wheat-eating guests. Susceptible to over cooking. You'll know that it's done when the cheese starts to bubble. A common mistake with there are two. One is overbaking and the other one's underbaking that I've seen with the cauliflower crust. Underbaking will be where the toppings in the center are not fully warmed all the way through. And overbaking is you might see browning and even burning of the perimeter of the crust from its exposure to the hot air from the oven. So be very gentle when you're cooking these and cook them a long time. They could take 5.5 minutes to get to the proper temperature when you're baking them carefully near the front of the oven or away from the flame. So please make sure to put all of your efforts into making this a success by handling each dough properly, understanding the differences between the doughs so that you can inform the guests on how to have the best possible unique experience at Blaze, and to encourage them to maybe come back another time to try a different dough. Because even if they don't eat gluten-free dough, it's still not an excuse not to come back to Blaze and give it a try.